All right, and we are live. Welcome back with Murphy Mac to another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast, where we help you get started on your fitness journey. How's it going, everybody? Hope y'all started off a great week. Hope y'all are doing okay, and I hope y'all are ready to learn because we have a guest joining the podcast today. We're going to bring her up onto the screen. We have Miss Regan Caruthers. I said that right.
Yeah.
Just to tell you a little bit about the podcast and who we are is we just try to help people that are just getting started on their fitness journey, working on their health, trying to live a healthier lifestyle. So we just trying to help people get started, or people that are newer that are just trying to learn. So we typically keep things pretty basic until we have people on like you, and then we'll dive deeper into certain topics when we have people on to talk more about them. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm glad you made it today. And if you would, just go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Regan Caruthers. I live out in the country about an hour west of St. Louis. I've got 10 acres and my own water, which I appreciate. And I have a yoga center. I'll tilt this just for a second so you can see it.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm a yoga teacher. And, yoga definitely is for fitness, but a different kind of fitness, more inner fitness.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and I've been eating organic food since the early 90s. People thought I was a little nuts. Um, yeah, so I'm interested to, kind of share some of the lifestyle that I've adopted over the years and why and the benefits to that. I'm a yoga teacher and a former corporate executive.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you on because I'm not too familiar with yoga. I mean, I know the basics of it, but I'm glad to have somebody that's a professional and we can ask some more questions about it. I know this is a very something that's a lot of people's interested in as well. I know it's more female based, but there are a lot of men that do yoga as well. So I think it is starting to become more popular, and people are realizing, like you said, it's fitness, but it's a different kind of fitness. It's more it is physical, but you're working on your mental as well. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about it today. But you mentioned you're a former executive, so you come from Silicon Valley. Just tell us a little bit about that. What did you do exactly?
I ran sales and business development for both early stage companies, educational technology companies, as well as more mature publicly traded companies like a McGraw Hill, which is a big content company. So, I began as an individual contributor and just continued to work and continued to have results. And that gave me the opportunity to be an executive with, a big title and a big salary. I didn't draw much meaning from it, but I was glad to have the income. And, working in ed tech, not like I was, selling bombs. So it wasn't out of integrity with my values, but the whole, I don't know, the values of the valley didn't really align too well.
Mm-hmm. Now, would you say your kind of love for yoga and health, did that start back then, or did it come after this time, or when did your health really become an important piece of your life?
I think probably always. I mean, I attended a grade school beginning at the age of 3 where we meditated every day and we did Tai Chi or gym. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I guess I was exposed early to what it means to have an inner life, right? And how to nurture that. Uh, when I had a dramatic awakening in my 20s, God told me lots of things, but one of the things I was told right out of the gate was to eat only organic food. So that was 94. Challenging to find it at that time. Um, but I've just, always, I guess, understood, not always honored, but understood that your consumption matters. What you put in your body, what you put in your mind, right? What you put in your heart, consumption on many levels matters a lot. And then just a few years ago, I learned I was dying. I had a congenital heart defect that I wasn't aware of, and I needed emergency open heart surgery. So, um, yeah, and I know it was my health going into that procedure um, that was a real asset. And in fact, when my surgeon came to see me on my day of discharge, which is just 4 days after open heart surgery, I was home. Um, he explained that there was no medical explanation of how I was alive prior to the surgery. So I believe it was my spiritual practice and my habits that not only had kept me alive prior to the surgery, but that I continue to be okay.
Well, I'm glad that everything worked out for you. I know that can be a very scary thing, knowing you have to have open heart surgery. Would you say like your perspective on your health changed after that?
I mean, everything's more precious when you face death, for sure. I mean, I don't have any fear of death. We could talk about that for the rest of the hour. So I had no fear about any of it. And again, I think that was emblematic of just what I've come to understand, the choices I've made, what I've chosen to study, and yeah, all the rest. But yeah, life is certainly precious. I kind of had that mindset going into the surgery, certainly. But when you face death, it changes everything.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about yoga, because, like I said, I'm not very familiar with all the ins and outs of it. I know basically what it is, but just for beginners, somebody that's never done it before, or somebody that wants to is looking into to doing it, or somebody that's never tried it before, how would you describe what yoga really is beyond just stretching?
Oh yeah, it actually there's a lot of misunderstanding in the West about what yoga is. There's a funny Indian comedian who talked about how the United States has kind of co-opted the practice, and now it's a blood sport, and people wear their $300 yoga pants and rush to yoga. And she's like, if you rush to yoga, you're doing it wrong. For yoga in Sanskrit, the language that was spoken at the time yoga was developed, means union. It is a process to support conscious union with God. So the physical practice of yoga, which is what most people think yoga is, right? The contorting your body and putting it in challenging shapes. Um, that's a limb of yoga. There's 8 limbs, and asana, the physical practice of yoga, is just one of the 8. And in Sanskrit, asana actually just means to sit. So the whole purpose of the physical practice, what people think of as yoga, right, is to prepare the body and to optimize the body for meditation. So yes, do you get more flexible? Yes. Do you get stronger? Yes. Do you improve your mobility? Absolutely. The postures do that, but that's not their intention. The intention is to learn through the discomfort, right, of the physical practice. How do you embody that conscious relationship with God when something's difficult? Right? That's just like life off the mat. How do you embody a relationship with God consciously when you're having a really difficult day, or you're in conflict with somebody, or there's some sort of, incoherence? So yeah, so yoga is a spiritual practice. It certainly can align with any faith. There's a lot of misinformation about that as well. And yeah, it's about 5,000 years old, and it was all created by men. So, for people that think it's a female thing, it was actually created by men.
So are there different styles of yoga, like different types of yoga? I know I've seen like hot yoga before. I know that's one style. Is there any other kind of different styles out there?
Hot yoga is not really yoga. And in fact, Bikram, who created hot yoga, is a sexual predator and a terrible person. So I don't support hot yoga at all. Yeah, there's many kinds of yoga, not just many types of physical practice of yoga, but many kinds of ways of um, focusing your yoga practice. So, for example, bhakti yoga is much more about devotion, about singing devotional songs to God and things like that. Karma yoga, which is really about do your actions right align with the wisdom and the will of God. Um, so there's hundreds of different kinds. You've probably heard, and this is a new type of yoga, vinyasa yoga, which is more of a athletic expression, more of a flow at a fairly rigorous pace. Uh, yeah, yeah, there's lots of different kinds.
Is there one that's more suited towards like beginners, or is there one that you would recommend to people, or does that kind of matter?
Um, well, I mean, if you're going to learn yoga, let's say at a studio, then look for a gentle or beginners or all levels class. If you're going to do it, in the comfort of your own home online, because there's a lot of free uh, yoga classes online. Again, just search for gentle yoga. I would say, like in terms of a particular style, hatha yoga is probably the most accessible. Restorative yoga, um, even yin yoga, though that can be challenging because you're holding the shapes for an extended period of time. But most of what happens in a yin class, you're lying down. You're not standing up or doing anything vigorous. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a way of learning how to quiet the mind, connect consciously with the breath and with the body. And, at a physiological level, your fascia, which is this webbing that you're covered with, that you'll see if you cook meat, if you silvery sort of stuff over the chicken or over the beef, is fascia. And we have it too, it's this webbing. And when you don't stretch, much less practice yoga, that fascia gets um, really, really inflexible, kind of like concrete. It's very hard for the muscles or even the skeleton to kind of express itself when the fascia has gotten so hardened. So that's one of the benefits of stretching for a physical yoga practice is the benefit to the fascia itself.
So do you need to be flexible at all to do yoga? Like that's just kind of a side effect of it.
That'll come in time, just like you wouldn't see a violin and expect to be able to play it when you picked it up. Well, just like yoga or anything, it requires practice. And yeah, I mean, I'm still, even though I have over 500 hours of training in yoga, but I feel like I know very little.
So how long would you say someone needs to do yoga a day, or how many times a week do you do it, and how long do you do it at a time?
That's a good question. I mean, everybody's different. I would just, I guess, encourage your listeners or your viewers to just give it a try, and to know that when they do it initially, unless they're already in very good physical shape, right, um, it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to feel awkward, and you're going to feel like you don't really know what you're doing. That's just, that's just part of it. Obviously, when you're learning something new, the more you do it, the better.
Hmm.
And go to, I would suggest going to a studio that's well rated in your community because it's nice to practice with other people. It's encouraging and uplifting to be with others. But there's also great, content online where you could do it in the comfort of your own home. I would suggest to anyone beginning with yoga to really utilize props. So yoga blocks, straps are like assets, like tools that make yoga more accessible because what you really want to make sure you're doing, and this is why it's good to have a teacher as opposed to just trying to do it alone online, is that your alignment matters. Not only does it matter in terms of getting all the benefits out of a particular posture, but it matters in terms of preventing injury. So, a yoga block, let's say you're doing a forward fold standing and you're trying to bring your hands flush with the earth. But for a lot of people, the earth is far away when they do that. So you put yoga blocks under your hands to create more length, right? So that you can really align into the shape. A yoga strap, for example, if you're seated and let's say doing a forward fold, yoga straps on the balls of your feet that you're, holding with tension can again provide a little bit more extension and a little bit more help to be in that shape and in the alignment way. So use props, people, their egos get in the way and they're like, I don't want props or I don't want to look like I need help. Like just leave that at the door because yoga props can really be an ally.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize. I've heard of a yoga block before, but I didn't know there was other tools as well that you could utilize
Yeah,
during yoga. So that
holsters, because sometimes uh, I don't know, pigeon, which is a hip opening posture. Some people need to have something underneath them. Um, Yoga blankets are great tools. Let's say your knees are, I don't know, kind of cranky and you're on hands and knees and tabletop. Well, it's nice to have a folded blanket under your knees. As an example.
so what would you say the difference between a yoga practice and like a typical workout is? I know earlier you kind of mentioned it's more of a spiritual thing. Is there any other way you would like differentiate the two?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on what you're doing. Um, You can certainly get a good cardio workout doing yoga, but that has to do with pacing, right? So that's a faster flow, quicker transitions between one and the other, for example. Um, Yoga, when you're holding, let's say, a standing posture, like a warrior two or warrior one, those are going to strengthen your legs. There's postures that strengthen the core. Um, Yeah, and it's again because it has a different intent, right? Yoga as a practice, the physical practice is just a small component of what it means to practice yoga. But if you're speaking about just the physical practice alone, you can gain a lot of utility, just like you would, going to Zumba or, working with weights, but in yoga, the weights are your own body, right? Like if you're holding plank in yoga, right? There's a lot of strengthening that's happening with your core, actually down the length of the body. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Who would you recommend should try yoga or do yoga? Is there a specific person, or can
Every,
everybody benefit from it?
everybody, yeah. I mean, I had a 94-year-old yoga student. Yeah, everybody can do it. It just means that maybe you're doing different things than somebody else. There's a great deal to the practice, even the physical practice. Um, but yeah, there's no special person for yoga. Anybody can do it.
So how does yoga help people kind of reconnect with their body, especially if they've kind of experienced some kind of trauma in the past?
Oh, well, I mean, a big component of yoga practice is, is the breath, right? It's the breath work that accompanies yoga. And so when we utilize the breath, um, that can help unlock thematically some of the trauma, right? Like your issues are literally in your tissues. So as you bring breath and attention and intention to yourself and you become more inwardly focused, then you know more about what needs tending and what needs healing because you're bringing your awareness inside. We're chronically distracted in this culture. We're constantly being brought out of ourselves. And so yoga is a way of coming back to self through the breath, through conscious embodiment, and through the intention of the practice itself.
So you've talked a little bit about meditation and now breath work. So you're doing that during yoga, but do you also do that outside of yoga as well? Are you still practicing like meditation alone and breath work alone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you recommend doing both?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's 8 limbs to yoga. So the first limb is the yamas. These are ethical guidelines that we very much like the Ten Commandments. And then the second limb of yoga are niyamas. These are practices, ways of tending and caring for the self. Then the third limb is asana, which is the physical practice, meditation. There's pranayama, which is breath work. There is the limb just focused on concentration. Like can stop having this monkey mind and focus it, as well as the ultimate limb, which is samadhi, and that's that conscious divine meaning.
So many people start yoga for the physical reasons, but they kind of stay for the mental and emotional benefits that they get from it. Why do you think that happens?
Because you feel better.
Because you feel better? Yeah, I think you probably don't realize that it comes with the mental and emotional side of it when you first
Yeah,
start.
and even just pranayama, one of the limbs of yoga, which is the breath work. I mean, there are so many breath work practices to evoke different states of consciousness for different reasons. If you're highly stressed and your nervous system is out of whack, learning how to just extend and exhale. So let's say you're counting to 5 as you inhale through the nose, and then you learn to exhale to a count of 8, for example. That down regulates the nervous system. Or Nadi Shodhana, which is alternate nostril breathing, which is all about balancing the nervous system and balancing the hemispheres of the brain. And there's lots of different ways to breathe for different reasons, and no matter what, they all feel better. There's this other kind of breath work where you're making like a humming sound like a bee, and the reason you do that is to stimulate and tone the vagus nerve, which is what connects the heart and the brain. And if people are chronically stressed, their vagus nerve is also stressed. So some of the yoga practices in terms of the breath that create that kind of vibration through a humming that you're doing as you inhale and exhale. Yeah, so there's lots to learn.
Oh yeah. Do you see yoga helping with anxiety or overthinking? Yeah, that's what I figured. It's kind of, I guess, being in that like meditative state would help for sure.
Yeah, and just learning through the observation of your mind, to get, more conscious about what's running up there. And a lot of people, it's very noisy, and there's a lot of stories running, and they tend not to be positive. Right? Our inner lives tend um, not necessarily to support our inner health within. We've got a lot of bad habits.
So are there any misconceptions about yoga that you think um, that's out there? Any misconceptions that you think is wrong?
Oh, there's a ton that somehow it's for women. You said that like really right. And no, it was actually developed by men. Women tend to be more open to yoga for some reason. But as a man, like find a male teacher. There's got to be a male teacher at a studio somewhere in your geographic area, or find a male teacher online with a good one. Another common misconception, which I confront in my community all the time, is that church leaders often say that yoga leads to Satan. I'd say that's a bit of misinformation.
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, I hadn't, I mean, in California, I lived in California for most of my adult life in Santa Cruz, and never heard of it before this. I've heard it a lot since returning to Missouri.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's BS.
Yeah, I would think that would be the opposite. Like it would bring you more to God. That would be the opposite, from my
Right,
opinion.
right. But I mean, it is a direct experience. So maybe that's why the church doesn't like it. Because what's their role? If you can directly connect to God without the help of the church, I don't know. I tried to have a conversation with the priest about it because I had heard that he had told the congregation uh, shortly after I opened my center that yoga leaded to Satan, but for whatever reason I could never find him. So I'm going to actually just make an appointment to confront that. Because I would love to ask a priest who says that, like, okay, so what are the 8 limbs of yoga? And which of these limbs do you think is somehow demonic? Like, explain it. Happy to listen, but yeah, I don't understand where that comes from. Like some theories.
So what would be the best way for someone to get started like today if they've never done yoga before?
Oh, sure. So find a belt or a long scarf. You'll use that as your yoga strap. Maybe some big books could serve as yoga blocks. Uh, find some good firm pillows. Those could be your bolsters. And then go on Google and search beginning yoga or gentle yoga or yoga for people who've never done it before. And you'll see a bunch of teachers who freely offer online classes at no cost, and just give it a try. And then, depending on that, I would very much recommend finding a local studio with a teacher. Um, there are online teachers, but it's asynchronous. They've already recorded a class, um, so they're not speaking to you specifically. So yeah, that's what I would do. Find a studio and go on Google. I happen to love Yoga by Adrienne online. I think she's a very good teacher and very accessible for those who are new to the class.
Are there any potential like risk factors that come with yoga? Like, is there any? Could you get injured doing it at
Oh,
all?
absolutely, absolutely.
So, like, what kind of injuries do you see?
Well, I'm always cautioning my students, right? People, again, I don't know all the reasons why, but maybe they're not using a cloth and they really need one, and so they end up over, overreaching and their physiology doesn't support it, I always caution my students to have a microbend in their joints, like in their knees and in their elbows, because if you're hyperextending, that can, create more of an environment for injury. And it's really important to listen to your body. Nothing should hurt. There should be no pain when you're practicing. That doesn't mean there isn't discomfort and uncomfortable sensation, which is different from pain. So I always encourage people to really listen to their bodies and back off. Like just because I'm offering something in a class doesn't mean you need to do it. Right? It's your practice, not mine. I'm just here as a guide. But yeah, I mean, you can hurt yourself. You can sprain a shoulder or sprain your knee or pull a muscle and all the things because you're using everything in the yoga class typically.
What are some of the most common mistakes that you see beginners do when it comes to starting yoga?
Not using props, not listening to their body and doing more than their body is really um, ready for. Yeah, yeah, like go easy.
Mm,
When you're first learning, just go easy. And the other thing is, any good yoga teacher is always cueing the breath, right? To inhale at a certain time and to exhale at a certain time. And yet I witness a lot in my classes, even though I'm cueing the breath, people aren't doing it. And the breath not only oxygenates the body and makes it um, just more ready to do stuff, the exhale is also your ally in how you release tension dramatically, right? Like nothing like a nice audible exhale to help you, kind of move the stress and move the tension out. So yeah, I think that's the kind of mistake people hear a teacher doing the breath, but they're not doing the teacher.
so would you say that yoga and strength training kind of complement each other?
Absolutely. I mean, yoga is a form of strength training.
Mm. So do you recommend people still kind of do strength training and yoga together, or not at the same time? But
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a compliment. Any well-rounded yoga class, you'll be getting stronger, more
mhm.
flexible, and more mobile as a result. I teach senior yoga, and I have a couple that's quite committed, and they come twice a week, typically, to my classes. And she told me the other day, she's in her 70s, she said, I'm in better shape now after working with you for a year than I was in my 30s.
Wow. I think that's all the yoga questions I have for you. Is there
So,
anything I'm missing for yoga? I'm trying to think.
I mean, there's so much more to talk about, but no,
Yeah,
I think we,
I think we gave everybody a good place to start. Gave them a good gist of it. So you've written a book. You have a book, Tragic Magic. Tell us a little bit about the book and what it's about.
oh, sure, it's a memoir. Yeah, it's a memoir. So, I've had a pretty unusual life, right? Beginning with my early education, which I touched on. I had a dramatic spiritual awakening in my 20s, and I've done a great deal of conscious healing from a lot of trauma. Growing up with a memory ill mother and an abusive stepfather, and then that's dad. Um, so in sharing my story, I'm just hoping to touch readers and to encourage them to do the work. Like your trauma isn't your fault, but healing is your responsibility. That's how this doesn't continue to get passed down is when we interrupt that cycle by tending and healing ourselves. So I wanted to, write my story to ideally inspire people to do that and for them to see themselves in my life. Even though there are some unusual or quote unquote exceptional aspects, I think what is highly relatable is the mess. We all have messes, either inherent messes or we make messes. And how do we clean it up? And how do we become more whole? And so that's why I wrote it. And there's, moments in the book that certainly defy any kind of rational explanation. Moments of real divine guidance and divine intervention, miracles, really. I touched on one in that there was no medical explanation of how I was alive prior to my surgery, and in cardiology, it is understood that if you have less than 0.2 centimeters for blood to flow through your aortic valve, considered not capable of supporting life. Well, mine was less than that, and I was teaching yoga, so explain that. And I don't want to give it all away because then people won't buy my book. But yeah, it's a pretty inspiring, interesting read. It reads a lot like fiction, but we'll see.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I know a lot of people can relate better when other people share their personal experience, especially if they've kind of went through something similar than that to that. So that really helps people, I think. So thank
Yeah,
you for that.
yeah.
Were there any other kind of healing practices that you used other than yoga to kind of get you through like your recovery process?
Oh, a lot of prayer, um, and your diet matters a lot.
Your
So
diet?
yeah, I would
Yeah.
encourage your viewers, listeners, to really get honest about what they're consuming. Consuming not only food, but what they're consuming through their handheld device or their television. And there's so much toxic content. Like if you watch something that scares you, there's a physiological, biochemical consequence to that. Like, why do that? Life is hard enough. I mean, maybe for the adrenaline rush, but huh? Cortisol is a byproduct of adrenaline. So I would encourage people to eat organic food, to eat whole foods. If it comes out of a box or a bag or is advertised on TV, don't eat it. And if you can't spell it, if you're looking at ingredients on something and you couldn't spell it or pronounce it, again, don't consume it. So much of the food in a modern grocery store is made in a lab. Like, do you really want to do that? And it's made to be addictive. And there are food chemists whose sole job is to make sure that you have a dopamine response to the Pringles you eat, which is going to make you want to eat more Pringles because dopamine's like the feel good brain chemical. Um, yeah, so start there. I mean, I walk. In fact, I just did this today and drafted an essay about it because when I go to a grocery store, I'm just alarmed by what is there. I mean, I just saw apple pie flavored Kraft macaroni and cheese. Like, I mean, could it get any more absurd? Like, why would you say want to buy that and start to eat it? You eat Cheetos and your fingers turn orange. What, what do you think that's doing to the interior of you? Well, if you're not eating organic food, and I know it's expensive, it doesn't have to be certified organic, but pesticides are neurotoxins. That's how the bugs die. So what do you think you're doing to yourself ingesting food that's very different.
Yeah, I liked how you mentioned getting your diet right because I don't think people realize how much their what they eat affects other things than just their physical. Like it affects your mood and all that kind of stuff, like your mental health and all that. So the diet is just as important for physical fitness as it is for your overall health, your mental health. So
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
yeah, and I like your rule. If it's in a box, a bag, or if it's advertised on TV, don't eat it. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's easy. Everybody can understand that.
Yeah.
And I like the if you can't spell it, or if you can't pronounce it, if you're looking at ingredients, something.
Yeah, and typically if it has more than like 4 or 5 ingredients, you probably don't need it either.
Well, again, just eat whole foods.
Hmm.
And I don't mean whole foods like the grocery, I mean whole foods, fruits and vegetables. One of the reasons that I actually market uh, a, a bunch of products from this amazing company called Juice Plus is to bridge the gap. According to functional medicine, you're supposed to get 9 to 13 diverse servings of fruits and vegetables in a day. That's who does that, right? And so Juice Plus provides dehydrated fruit and vegetable capsules, right? Powders, superfood powders, supplements for the brain, and a great new supplement for gut health. People don't realize that the health of the gut not only has everything to do with how strong your immune system is, it has everything to do with your mental health. And so taking a good pro and prebiotic is really important to try those. It matters to help people.
So, so what are a few like tools that could help a beginner integrate just better practices throughout their daily life, like better, more healthy, like you mentioned, eating whole foods would be one thing. Are there any other tools out there that you like to recommend?
Yeah, gratitude. To have a conscious gratitude practice. And it's not about thinking about what you're grateful for. It's actually pausing and feeling the gratitude. Right? We all have things that we can feel grateful for. So start there in terms of a spiritual practice if you don't already have one. Is just sit with your eyes closed, reflect on what you're grateful for, and actually, as you go down the list, truly feel that gratitude. There's so many biochemical advantages to feeling more love, more gratitude, more often. I worked for the Heart Math Institute for many years. And they're probably the leader in kind of proving this out scientifically over 400 clinical studies about the power that conscious love and gratitude has on the health of the body as well as to facilitate cortical function.
So if a listener is struggling, with consistency when it comes to working on their health or on their nutrition, is there what advice would you give that person that may be falling off track?
Let's be general with yourself. This is not an easy thing to do, to change behavior and to become more conscious, right, about your consumption. So if you've fallen off, just recognize it, but don't beat yourself up about it or judge yourself. Just get back on track. And it can be small things, right? Maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to eat at least more servings of fruits and vegetables, whether they're organic or not. It's still better. Make sure to thoroughly wash your conventional fruit and vegetables. You want to try to get as much of the pesticides off of it. Mm. And do the inventory, like look in your pantry and throw things out. Like Just go in there and look at ingredients. A lot of people don't have the habit of really even understanding what they're consuming, right? So again, you don't have to be radical. I mean, if you want to be that, that's fantastic, but you don't have to be. Just begin to make small changes, like eat out less. If you eat a lot of fast food and the idea of not doing that seems impossible, well, maybe do it one day less a week. Just find small ways that you can make these dietary changes, because if you do too much too soon, it might be really hard to kind of stick with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the problem that a lot of people experience when they first get started is they're either all in or they're all out, and you that's not a good philosophy to have when it comes to your health or fitness. Just because you're not going to be perfect, you're going to have off days. You're probably going to eat something that you shouldn't have ate. You're going to eat out one day, so it's hard. You're never going to be perfect. So there's no point in believing in the philosophy of I'm either all in or I'm all out, because nobody's perfect. We're all gonna have downtime. We're all gonna have good times. So you just gotta, like I said, make small changes one at a time, and then those changes will start to stack on top of each other. And before you know it, you'll make a pretty big change in your life, and you'll be on the right track to getting your health in check. So I like that advice of one little habit at a time, and then those just build on top of each other.
And as you commit to your own healing, right? Like I think the source of a lot of our bad habits has to do with dishonoring and not loving it. When you love yourself truly, consciously, you're more inclined to make healthy decisions. You know, just like you wouldn't feed a loved one unhealthy food, even if you're doing it to yourself. You probably wouldn't do it to your grandchild. I mean, maybe you would, but you know what I'm saying. Like, healthy habits, I think, are an extension of self love.
And that's where the yoga comes in. It helps you, feel more connected with yourself. So
Yeah, totally.
it's a full circle. It comes back around.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to think of something else that may help the listeners here. Um,
We just spend less time being sedentary, right? We spend so much time scrolling on our phones, watching TV, consuming content that is not uplifting or inspiring or hopeful. And all of that makes this whole process of becoming more healthy harder. So instead of, scrolling on your phone, pick up a book or listen, to an inspiring podcast. Just become more aware of what's coming in.
yeah, it's the social media thing is a big one because there's like you were mentioning earlier, there's so much negative, toxic stuff on there that it can really have an effect on your mood and you don't even realize it. So that's why I say like social media in the morning should be a no-no. Like you should never have it first thing in the morning at all, because that's just gonna set you up for a bad day all day right there first thing in the morning. So I highly recommend don't get on social media early in the morning. Wait till you've been up several hours before you gonna get on it, because you don't want to start your mood off or your day off bad from the get go, because then that's just gonna affect the rest of your day. So that's a big rule of mine. I don't allow myself to get on early in the morning because it will affect my mood.
Yeah, yeah, our nervous systems aren't designed, frankly, for how we live. We're just not. So um, disconnecting is important.
So you've mentioned a lot about your spiritual journey. How does that kind of play into the yoga itself? Do you kind of connect them, you put them together, or do you think of them separately?
I mean, yeah, it's the same. I mean, yoga just provides again, these eight limbs, these eight things to do, right? To help facilitate conscious union with God. Um, you don't have to do the eight limbs of yoga to have a conscious relationship with God, but boy, it sure helps. And yeah, so I don't see them as separate things. But I do spend, a lot of time throughout the day praying, like connecting to God, asking for help, certainly a part of the practice, and probably mostly associated with, I don't know, dhyana, like meditation, is one of the ones. And most people, think that they can't meditate or that meditating is too hard. But boy, give it a try. If anything, just to become more conscious by sitting in the quiet of what's running up there. Because as just close the eyes, nice long spine, and you're just in that inner, like your intention is drawing itself inside, then you become more conscious of what's inside. Maybe you don't know quite what to do with it yet. You don't know how to quiet it or make it stop, uh, but you can't feel or you can't change what you can't acknowledge, right? So that's the real critical piece of meditation as you begin, and it's hard, is that you realize how distracted you are
Hmm.
inside, right? And don't we want to be more present for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our children? It's very hard to do if this is running 24/7 and typically running with negative content.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody that their mind is always running, like you said, and they want to practice, the meditation, but they can't quite focus. They can't sit there long enough. What would you recommend them do?
One thing I love to help people with when they're beginning is sit in the quiet. Here, go ahead. You do it. You do it. Close your eyes. Go ahead and close your eyes. Put your hands over your heart. And hand over the other. Just go ahead and take an inhale through your nose to count of 5, and exhale out of the nose to the same time. And as you continue to inhale and exhale this way, imagine that you're directing the breath through the center of the chest. So where your hands are, it's like that's where your focus is. You're dropping your focus down into the heart, inhaling the 5, and exhaling the 5. Just trying to create an easeful rhythm of breath through the heart. And now recall a moment in your life when you felt deep gratitude for someone or something. And beyond the image of that moment in your mind is how it felt. That's the important thing. Re-experience that feeling of gratitude while continuing to direct the breath through the heart. But that's a very accessible practice. Ideally, you do that for 20 minutes if you can. Set your timer on your phone. And what you'll notice is that the mind's going to interrupt. You're like, well, what about the laundry? What am I cooking for dinner tonight? Like, whatever it's going to do, that's its nature. And so instead of judging that, you just say, oh, okay, I need to reconnect with my breath. And I need to reconnect to this feeling that I've known of gratitude or of love, right? Any elevated emotion. Maybe you witness something so compelling out in nature that, like, gosh, You could feel God's presence on a hike or watching a sunset. For any of these peak moments that you've known, to re-experience the feeling of those. And if you're sincere in that connecting to the emotion, like you're really in it, you're really feeling it, the mind tends to naturally settle. Because you can't really do two things at once. So if you truly focus on that feeling of love and gratitude, I'm not also thinking about cooking, but it's going to, be a bit of a dinner. But that to me is a good way to start.
Yes, that definitely helps having kind of like a guide to help you through it. So again, go to search it up on Google. I'm sure they have some good guided.
And that's a good technique that HeartMath developed. I mean, it's an ancient technique. It's one that they developed and studied. So, yeah, highly recommend the work of the HeartMath Institute.
Awesome. So if you could, just let everybody know where they can find you and where they can find your book.
Oh, sure. So you can find Tragic Magic on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, either as a paperback or an ebook. Um, I have a website, regancaruthers.com, which has more content and some accessible practices, particularly for beginners. I do something called Inner Life Coaching, which you can learn about on my website and schedule a complimentary call with me to learn more about it and kind of describe to me what your goals are, and we'll see if it's a fit. And if it is, then we'll begin working together. I'm not active on social media right now. I'm taking a nice long break. But there is, if you go on Instagram and just search my name, Regan Caruthers, you'll find me. And there's a lot of videos and things that I've, recorded over the last couple of years that you can see in the good there. I just not active right now. God told me to take a break.
Hey, a break is needed sometimes. I probably need it. I probably should take one myself every now and then at least. But yeah, I'll put your website in the description too. So if y'all want to go there, you can look in the description below to find that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I learned a lot about yoga and meditation, so that's pretty neat. I'll definitely have to try it out myself. I don't know how I'll do. I probably need an instructor though to help me with it.
Well, I'm happy to coach you if you want to learn some things. That process doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. You Um, there's a few key things to do in the day that can kind of accelerate your own inner health. So happy to help you with that.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. I enjoyed having you on the podcast, and I'm sure the listeners will love it as well. So thank
Yeah.
you for joining today.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
You have a good night.